So the idea of the framework is to say, hey, like in order to make one of these decisions, what you need to do is you really need, like you need a kind of a way to step through it. And so the first step is to frame the question, to actually say, you know, what are you choosing between? And, you know, is the question, you know, should I see my sick parent today or, you know, next week? And I think early on, I was talking a lot about childcare and people asking, you know, and people would tell me, like, should I send my kid to daycare or not? And I would tell them, like, or not is not a childcare solution. Like, you can't answer that question until you tell me what is the other thing. And I think that for some people was like, oh, like, there was almost a moment of like, I hadn't thought about it like that because I'm so focused on the one choice. And once you're so focused on that, it's very hard to, you know, think about trade-offs. So really sort of like, what are the two or three, or what is the question? What's the question you're asking? And then in the COVID space, the next question is really sort of, how can I make this as sort of low risk as possible? And then how risky is that really? And those two pieces sort of move together, but my sense is that particularly in the risk evaluation piece, this continues to be in some ways fairly important because, and maybe this may be less true where you guys are, but here COVID is really salient. Like it's the thing people are thinking about all the time. And when people ask me questions like, is it okay for my kid to go to the playground? You know, should. And you know, I'm trying to talk them through, like, you really need to actually get down to like what those numbers are, because we are not great at evaluating risk as people. And when risks are small but not zero, they sort of take on a salience in our head that's like it's there and it's hard to ignore. And so by telling people, just sit down with the actual numbers and think about, you know, how do they compare to other risks that you are taking. I must have spent like weeks of my year talking to people about other risks that they're also taking. And how this compares to those risks. So, you know, get all this information, think about the rest, and then make a decision. And this is sort of the like other realization of some of these things, that even for these hard decisions where you cannot be sure that you are right, and where if you finish the decision and you feel potentially very crummy, that you still need to make the decision. And that sometimes all we can do is decide, is feel that we have made the decision well. We cannot feel it is the right decision. And I think that realization is a hard one, but sometimes it's the only thing that like kind of lets you move forward. And so the example is, you know, I spent a lot of time talking about the choices to see sort of family at the holidays last year. And I'm not sure that, you know, the choices will feel different this year, but maybe not that different. And, you know, and in the end, I kind of came to you, I said, look, you know, there are only really two ways I could feel after making this choice. I could choose to see my family, and then I will feel anxious the whole time. Or I cannot choose to see them, and I can feel sad. And that's it. There's no secret option C where everything is great. There's only anxious or sad, and you have to pick one of those. And in some sense, like, you're going to feel like that's it. That's a terrible, you know, this is very unfortunate. But it is almost impossible to choose if you haven't sort of gotten to that point, because when you make one, you're like, oh, that feels terrible. I feel anxious. Okay, I do that. Oh, well, I feel sad. I'm going to go back and forth. And the recognition that, you know, there isn't a great option, which is sort of the COVID space that we're in.